Hi, it's Linda. Today I thought we would talk about papers to put in our junk journals to make the pages with. Now there's laser paper, which is perfectly acceptable, but it's just plain until you do something to it. So let's look at some other things that we can use in our junk journals to make pages. I thought I would show you some of the things like this that are still attached to their original form. And then we'll look at some of my journals and how I use some various papers in them. This is a steno book. I don't even know, did we even have steno books anymore? I haven't seen one in a store in ages. But this is, it's got a copyright date on it of 1990, so that's how long it's been around in my household. And it's got a little bit of a blue tint to it, which I think is kind of nice. I plan to use some of these pages sideways in a blue journal that I'm planning on. Then this paper is called Dot Rule Notebook, and it's very thin paper. It's got little dots and a grid pattern on it. It looks nice, but when you coffee dye it, is when it really gets interesting. This is some that I've coffee dyed. I put some bubble wrap on it to make those dots there. And it gets a real crinkle to it when you coffee dye it, which happens to most paper, but this paper seems to have that effect more so than other kinds of paper because it's so thin, I think. But that was sprayed, this was sprayed. This one ended up with some white blotches on it too, so darker. But anyway, that is what I did to this paper to make it more interesting. Then there's also grid paper, which I've dyed some grid paper as well. This is a slightly different grid paper, but you can see how it changed when it was dyed. And this is an accountant's worksheet pad. And just like this makes pretty pages, but it also is interesting when you coffee dye it. It gets a real aged look. This particularly aged the edges of it when I coffee dyed. These have very dark edges on them. And I think that just happened when the coffee just kind of accumulated at the edge of the page and gave it that really brown look. So that is ledger type papers. Then this one is vellum, clear vellum. I have some here that I've embossed. And I sprayed it with water before I embossed it, so it's got a little bit of a curl to it. But I did one that I didn't spray, and it kind of broke the some of these lines where these stems are. See, that's kind of broken there. I don't know if you can see that on camera or not. So it may not do too well with that particular embossing folder. But anyway, that's vellum, and it's a little bit expensive, so I don't use it a whole lot. But it's another look in your journal. Let's look at some vellum paper in a journal. Not just the plain kind, but this is some that I got that was printed with this buffalo check on it. And then I glued some Christmas trees off some wrapping paper on this kind of graph paper, which is also coffee dyed. But the design shows through. I think that is a cute, interesting effect. I don't think, oh, here's one. This one I stamped with ink, with a script stamp, and then this was kind of a stamp that has blotches, and I put that on there. So that, I think it's interesting to have those different textures on there, even when they are just a texture of ink on paper. So that's a couple of kinds of ways. Here's the other side of that. It's just plain. It just gives you a little more interest. You can glue things to this if you want to, do something like that. So you're not limited with what you can do to it or with it. It's another one of those I did. Okay, that is vellum. Then brown paper. This was some brown paper packaging that I had bought some teacups at a thrift shop, and she wrapped them up in this paper. And I, of course, saved it to use in my junk journal. And it's nice and wrinkled, and I think I can have some fun with that. And in this journal, this is not the same brown paper, but I used brown paper packaging from Amazon, I think is what this was. And it's also, I don't know if you can see or not, but it's also wrinkled slightly. And I just stitched around the edge of it with my sewing machine with a zigzag stitch here and straight stitch there, just to give it a little more interest. And folded up a pocket there. Stitched that a couple of times. It's kind of a flimsy page, but if you glued on a picture of something or some design, maybe a flower design that you cut out, it would give it more body and it wouldn't be so flimsy. There's another on that page, because this page was so flimsy, I glued this page to it so that it made it more sturdy. But I left the edge of it out on past the edge of this paper to just give it a different look. This coffee dyed and I stamped it with some stamps. So that is another way to decorate a page like that. These are some pages that are out of a encyclopedia that I found for free at the library. And I put coffee dye on them. And this one apparently was next to a page that had some red or pink on it, because it has a pink image on it now too with the other. And I just like the way coffee dyed paper looks and feels. It gives it a different texture. It feels smoother and slicker. I can't describe it. I'd encourage you to coffee dye some paper, or watercolor colors, or food coloring colors, and just to see what it does to the paper, because I just think it's really interesting. So on this paper, when I was done with food coloring, I used the shelf liner material, and it left this stripe design on the paper because it had a raised surface on the shelf liner, which I think makes an interesting paper, and it gives it texture, which is nice too. And then other things I've coffee dyed include some pages out of a music book and doilies, various doilies of different colors. I thought this looked pretty on the blue. You know, just as something, and maybe put a picture on there too, just to make it look pretty. And I dyed that with the food coloring. And this one I dyed with Tim Holtz Distress Oxide ink. I think this was Stormy Sky I did that in. And more coffee dyed doilies. And when the coffee doesn't get all the way on all the paper, it leaves designs like that on it, which you may or may not like, but you can always glue something over it if you don't like the way it looks. Or you may decide you like the way it looks. It's just a different look. This one is another one I put bubble wrap on, and it made that design on it. And I stacked them up together with the bubble wrap in between. This one had a piece of lace over it, and it has the roses that showed up. More bubble wrap. I got into the bubble wrap. Every one of them is different. This was sprayed with a spray bottle, and so was that one. But then I was stacking them, and coffee water accumulated there and left that kind of like a watermark stain almost on it. These are ones that I dried in the oven, and you see how crinkly they are. This was notebook paper, and it had a doily laying on it, so it left that impression on it. And that almost looks like a face right there. That had a doily and an envelope stacked on it. And this design right in here, I don't know where that came from. I guess that was just the coffee accumulating there. This is from the oven rack, where it was laying on the oven rack. I think this was a piece of sketchbook paper. So it looks a little different and lighter on the back. I have no idea what that little mark right there came from. You never know what you're going to get when you're coffee dyeing paper. That's part of the fun of it, I think. And this one really got brown. Really, almost too burnt to use. But you still have that design of the doily on there, which is kind of interesting, too. So that is coffee dyed paper, and you can have a lot of fun with it. Another thing you can use in making junk journal pages or covers is wallpaper. And we recently discovered a box that had some of these wallpapers in them that were my mother-in-law's. And they're very old. This one is very old and fragile. And I don't think it could stand on its own as a page because it is so fragile. But you can glue this down. I glued this onto this card. And it reinforces it and makes it sturdy. And so it's not going to just peel off and flake. So that's one kind of those papers. And then I'll show you a couple of other ones that we got in that batch. This one is green and gold. I think that's pretty too. And this one. These are probably, I would guess, from the late 40s or 50s maybe. I'm guessing on that, but that kind of looks like a 50s design to me. I had been wanting some vintage wallpaper, and so I was tickled to find them. Then this is more modern wallpaper. It feels like it has a vinyl surface to it. And so it would be sturdy enough if you wanted to use it as just a page in your journal. You could do that and just have that as your page. And you could write on the back. That's just a paper surface there. Or make pockets out of it, or do a lot of different things with that. This is a piece of sketchbook paper that I embossed, and I folded it this way and put it in an embossing folder and ran it through the machine. And so this side has the debossed image, and this side has the embossed image. But I thought that was pretty. You can use that like at the top of a page or something, or you can just put it in there as a regular page and glue a picture on there, or lace down the side, whatever, just to make it pretty. Or if you wanted to write on it, you could put another piece of paper over that to give a writing space there. These pages came out of a scrapbook paper pack, and I had cut out some butterflies with a punch out of some pink paper, and I just decided to glue them on that. And then I liked it, and I thought, well, I may tip that into a page, as a page in a journal. I plan to make a pink journal, so that may be a page in that. And this is just, I mean, this just came this way in this scrapbook paper pack. And I thought it might be pretty in that journal as well. This is a page out of a little notebook I use as a prayer journal. And I thought that paper was pretty, so I'm going to use that in there too, I think. And I haven't decided. I may put it in the book where this is at the spine and this edge is sticking out. That's another one I did, but this time I only did this side of the page with the embossing and left this side plain. Coffee dyed envelope that I'm going to make a little folder thing to go on the edge of the page. Or you could sew it into your book. Put this into the spine and have these pages in your book. This is a dictionary page that I had seen Rachel of Roxy Creations doing painted pages. So I got out my watercolors and played for a while, and this is one of my pages that I did. These are some handmade papers that I did a long, long time ago. And I'd like to make some more handmade paper because that was fun. I put threads in that one and also in this one. But this one I also put pieces of curling ribbon. You drag your scissors across. Most of them fell off the paper, but they left an embossed place on. I don't know if you can see that or not, but these embossed places on there. And that's thread. This one I put flower petals in. And this one was kind of a fail because it's real thick up here and it's real thin down here. So I didn't do a very good job with that, but I kept it because you could tear off a piece of this and stamp journal or write journal on it or something, or use it somehow on a cover or in a book or whatever you wanted to do with it. So that is handmade paper. And there's all kinds of handmade paper that people sell. And if you like that look and want to use that, you can certainly buy it. This was a little page out of an address book that was old, and I thought it might make a cute page. One to tip into to a book. And what you do when you do that is, if you have a page here and a page here that aren't the same size or anything, but you want to put them into your book, you can just put them together with, you can even use washi tape. I would say put extra glue on it so it holds, or you can take a strip of paper and glue it here, just a narrow strip, just so it comes over the edges of those. And then when you bind it in, you put the holes in that strip of paper, and you have these pages in your book that way. So that's that. And this is more pages out of a dictionary. I think that's two different dictionaries because they look a little bit different. Those are fun to have, but you, I think I said this before in a different video, but you kind of need to watch what, like, that says gout right there in your book. You might not want it to say gout. So you might check what the paper says before you use it, or plan on covering that up with something. This is another book page out of a novel. What I did was paint over the text with gesso, and then I don't know if you can see the gold on there. I splattered it with gold, and also I think I used the green Distress Oxide. Let me grab this real quick. Bundled sage. What you do is you can rub this onto like a plastic mat like what I have here, and just rub the color on there and then spray some water on it, and then it's just liquid, and then you can flick it on there with a brush and it leaves speckles on your paper. And this side, I splattered it with some coffee water. So that was fun. I look forward to putting that in a book. This came out of a pad of children's practice writing paper, learning to print with the X height there and the full height of the letters there. But I coffee dyed it, so it has that crinkly feel too. And I think that'll make a neat page in a book. This is a sheet of stationery that I had, I think, when I was in high school. So it's antique, maybe. And it has this pretty tree design on it. And I really like this paper, and I used it a lot. But I was happy when I found I still had a little bit of it, so I'm going to put it in a journal. I'll probably put it in Tipton. And then these are pages out of a notebook of some kind with the holes in the edge, so that, you know, I can either leave that on for a ruffled edge or cut them off. I have a big old box of this kind of paper. It was a box of sample papers from a paper company. There were several kinds of paper in different colors and lots of different weights and all kinds. And it was just a huge box of papers, and they were all large. And most of the time they said what they were on the bottom of them. Like this one does. This one has the Strathmore Brigadoon Plain Edge Royal White, 75-pound text, etc. And it's really nice paper, and I had it for years. I made some other crafts out of it for a while. Now I can use it in my junk journals, and I'm real happy to have it. I was practicing watercolor, making different kinds of lines with my brush. You know, just practicing what happens when you paint with watercolors. And that looks like a mess. But you could take a little bit of it or a lot of it. Maybe make a page that's only got that much of it, paste something else on top, and it would be really pretty. So that's what I'm planning on doing. I may use this in my pink journal. This is one signature that I'm working on for the pink journal. This is scrapbooking paper, and it's 8.5 by 11 size. And I used a punch to put an edge on it that's decorative. That's coffee dyed or tea dyed. This is an envelope. That's another thing that you can use to make a page in your book. And on this side, it forms a short page. And on this side, it's a pocket that you can put things in the pocket. And you may want to cut it back some or do something different to it. And then on the other side, you have the flap. This is a good place where you could tip in a page. This is a little bit short for that. It's a little taller, but that's okay. It doesn't really matter. And then on this side, you could either glue it all the way down, or you could just glue these ends, and then you'd have a tuck spot here that you could slide a card or something into. So that is another option for a page. This was a page that I was working on, and I punched butterflies out of the edge here, and then I didn't like it. So then I glued this mulberry paper over the top of it, and I still didn't like it. So then I punched out some white butterflies and inked their bodies, and just made a row of butterflies going up there. This paper was some I dyed. It was pink originally, and I dyed it with coffee, and it just looked, particularly on this side, it just looked dirty to me, and that was one reason I didn't like it. So one of the things I did was I painted over it with gesso, and then I put this notepad underneath this paper that you could write on or glue something on there, or whatever you would like to do. And now I like it. After all of that, it took a while to get there. So don't give up when you're making your pages. This side, I splattered it with white paint or gesso and put lace on this side to cover up the holes where those butterflies were cut out. I think I also have mulberry paper under there too. And then that's more coffee, or I believe that's tea dyed. See, there's that paper again. It's kind of got a muddy look to it to me. But I put these flowers up here on this corner, and I had done stitching on this side, and I didn't like the way it looked on this side, so I put the flowers and some tea bag there to hide that. And I think it looks cute now. I'm still not wild about that color, but by the time you put some writing on it or do something else to it, it really won't show. And that's the back side with the splatters again. And this is a letter that my mother wrote to her mother from 1955. So I'm thinking I may put this in my book. I'm not going to put it in, bind it in, but I may put it in a pocket in the book. This is an 8x8 sheet of scrapbooking paper. So I have this flat back here, and I thought I might just put this paper and maybe either fold it over and make a pocket or a flap or something there. So that's some ways, some different things to use. I'm going to look in this book just a minute and see. Let's see here. Scrapbooking paper. That's some tea dyed, or could be coffee dyed. Graph paper. This one was sprayed with food color. This one I thought looked like the sky and the sea at Gulf Shores, and I put the sailboat on there and just mainly left it with the paper just showing. This is when I tipped the page in, but I didn't put it into the binding. I just tipped it in here to add that too, just for fun. This part of this journal is blank because I haven't written anything in it. I just did the first half of the book. That's an example of the tipped in page too. I glued this dictionary page to brown paper, and then I reinforced it with washi tape on this side. Some of that ledger paper. That looks like waves to me too. I did 2 dictionary pages and just glued both of them to brown paper and then reinforced with the washi tape there. Old calendars make good pages for your journals, or a supply of pictures to glue in. This is one I used when I was working. This is French Impressionist, which is one of my favorite kinds of painters. And so it has really pretty pictures in it. And that's probably what I'll do with this. Is I've got some more that I'm thinking about putting in a journal. So that's an idea. I mean, any kind of, it doesn't have to necessarily be this kind of calendar. It could be just a regular month-by-month calendar that you could use. I was going to show you some more of those pages out of that big sample package I had. This was one of them. It has like a ridgy design on it. And then it also came in this gold color over here. This is another piece of that sample paper. So anyway, there are lots of papers to find. That's another one of those pages I colored with watercolors. It was just a practice making those lines, and I just kind of did a flower on the side, and it makes a pretty page in a book. It's another piece of paper out of the sample book. This is another paper I wanted to mention. This is parchment paper, like baking paper, and this one is particularly thin. It's almost like tracing paper, but it's got that slick treatment on it, whatever they do to parchment paper. And I don't know that it's anything other than just decorative in the book. On this side, I put a doily in here as a page, and on the other side of the doily, see, I glued this paper to it, and that was a page, a piece of paper out of one of those scrap packs. Brown paper, packing paper. It's another piece of that nice paper. Another practicing my lines. See how pretty that looks with that? Or I think it does. I like it. And that's the thing. If you like it, it's your journal. You're making it. You like it. It's perfect. This was another envelope that was just I think it was a printer's sample book. I thought it was neat. It's got a Velcro fastener here, so you could put things in there, and then I sliced the end of it off so that it's also a pocket on this side. And you could glue something on there if you wanted to. This book has a lot of blank pages in it still, even though it's so very chunky. But I don't know. I like it. It was the first one I ever did, so I guess that it has special meaning to me because of that alone. Another piece of that big paper. And I sewed some rickrack on the edge of that page. I'm kind of veering off from paper, but these are pages, examples of pages, and that's another piece of just plain white out of that packet. This is not an exhaustive list of all the kinds of papers that you can use. I started making a list, and I mean cardstock, packaging, packing paper, watercolor paper, any of your like sketchbook paper, watercolor paper, drawing paper, tracing paper, any of those kinds of papers. You can use those in your books. And even, you know, paper that's not very good quality, like packing paper, you can use that. Napkins for decoupage, magazine pages. So anyway, just ideas of what you can use. And you know, you can put any kind of paper in your book you want to. You can use a piece of junk mail. This was junk mail. It was something really ugly on the side, and I put gesso over the top of it. And I stenciled on this side, and that side is still awaiting some inspiration to hit me for that. But on this side, I just put a little fabric tab down there. And this side, I stenciled and stamped. So that's a business reply envelope. Packing paper. One of our pharmacies, they have bags that have this medical print on them. Also kind of interesting. So I just put that in. So that's some wallpaper there that I made a belly band out of. And that's more of that. That's the other side of that bag paper. Any bag that you come across that has an interesting design on it, you might want to stick that in your journal, or use it for the cover of your journal. That has a napkin decoupaged on it. Okay, I think I've gone on long enough about various kinds of paper to put in your journals. I would be interested to hear what other ideas you have for paper for your junk journal. One other thing I wanted to mention was book pages, other than I've mentioned a few like dictionary pages, encyclopedia pages, and some of those. But I've done a video about books and using pages out of them in your junk journals. And so I didn't go into that much here in this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.